Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Back at you and Gloves Off. I'm Professor Buitrón. I'm here with a great guest, and he's been leading a group, a kind of a resistance, if you want to put it that way, of non-custodial parents here in Texas and for their rights. George Saldana, how are we doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me back on the show. I don't know if I would say resistance. Well, I guess, but you can't use the word resistance anymore. It means something totally different these days, and who knows what social media is going to do to us.
Everything has a different state. Every meeting now, and everybody is even afraid of a handshake. You know what I'm saying? So we have to come back to reality. But the reality is that non-custodial parents here in Texas, on the average of the non-custodial parents, about between 90 and 95% throughout Texas are men. And there's a big difference on that. And I'm not saying that women are not non-custodial parents, but I'm just saying that men are significantly the ones that are dealing with these problems, even though women are dealing with them as well. We don't want to get into men or women or whatnot, because it's a problem that has been created. And it's a problem that not only the police kind of brush off like if it's not, but it has severe consequences. And you have been teaching people, you have been opening the eyes to many, myself included, when they go into issues of this nature, especially with the courts and trying to visit your kids and so on and so forth. And I understand that there's a lot of parents that don't get to see their kids, not only on month's end, but the interference it's a big spectrum. But there's something that in the last 6 months that you've been seeing and seeing firsthand and experiencing. What is that?
I've never heard anybody say anything great about family court on either side, the winning side or the losing side. Nobody has anything good to say about it. We were just at a protest in Harris County 2 weeks ago. We've had lawyers stop by. We had lawyers, that recorded saying there's corruption in these courts. And yes, most of them target fathers, non-custodial parents, right? I think the average here in the state of Texas is 91.8 something percent. It's closer to 92%, but to be politically correct, it's 91 and 8/10, more or less. But yes, we do have a lot of mothers going through this as well. And, when it gets to this point, it's no longer a gender issue. Even though, yes, it does affect men more. The issue at hand now is that these attorneys and judges are allowing this to happen. The public policy 153 in the Texas Family Code states that we should, the best interest of the child is that the child, sees the parents as it's been rendered, and these court orders are not being upheld. I understand, they told me at first, well, judges don't want to throw moms in jail. Where we've seen where judges throw fathers in jail time and time again over child support.
Absolutely.
But now we're starting to see where judges aren't enforcing their orders, whatever. And that's very concerning to me, because now the child is part of that transaction. One of the things that we heard last year in the legislature was Ana Marie Ramos state that family law is a business. And it is. Every lawyer will tell you that. And my kid, your kid, everyone else's kids are not a business transaction.
Absolutely.
I'm not going into a contract to wage war to see who's going to pull my kid from me back and forth. And so now I've used logic and patterns. A lot of logic goes into this. And so I've been sticking to my guns about what I'm reading, because again, you go back to logic and you go back to the basics, the simple basic foundations, right? Are laws. Laws cover all of us. There's nobody immune from the law. If you're an American citizen, you're covered by the United States Constitution. And it's funny that, you bring me on today because we're starting to ramp up on the election cycle.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of hypocrisy going around in elections.
Absolutely. You interview many candidates, and I interview many candidates. A lot of the candidates they understand that there's a problem,
but none of them voice it out.
They don't know how to react to it. A lot of candidates understand it, but they just think it's normal. We're in a dangerous situation, okay? Because you have a lot of peace officers, and there's a lot of great peace officers out there. But when they go against a call, especially for an interference with child custody, the vast majority that we've seen go in there with an attitude, and they go in there with an attitude towards, usually it's a father, and they'll go against that father. And in some cases, as you have experienced, they remove the father because of trespass, and they'll throw him in jail. And all the father wants to do is enforce the decree that's written there. And it says there that an officer has the right to follow the decree if the decree is broken, and yet they don't do that. So
they say you must any law officer or peace officer of the state may use reasonable efforts. You have to read the word for what it says, reasonable efforts. And we're not trying to make parents felons. We're not trying to throw them in jail. But, if you could go talk to that other parent and talk them into, hey, look, it's a state jail felony. And if you don't turn over the child, I have to write it up as a felony because I have to report a felony. And if you're charged with a felony against this court order, you're going to go to jail and things are going to happen to you. Now you're going to be fighting in family court and criminal court. And I don't think that that's the best way to mitigate the situation at hand, right? What's discouraging to me is that these are men doing it to other men. They're fathers. They're fathers, and they could easily be put in our situation, easily.
And some of them are, and then that's when they realize that something's wrong. And it's interesting to see that changing on certain people. And you opened my eyes, you felt me, and we felt out many others here in Laredo, and some of them are just afraid of doing that. But what gets me is how the judges and the court system also treats the non-custodial parent, regardless whether it's a man or woman. The way they treat the non-custodial parent, they treat him as if he was a criminal from day one.
Yeah.
And that, to me, number one, is not right. It is something that occurs. It should stop. The judges understand that it's going on. People, and like you say, there's a lot of attorneys that say everything's corrupt there, and it feels that way. I have never seen it as per se. You see the residual effects that something occurred. You just can't pinpoint it. I'm going to talk about my experience. It took us a while before I had my final decree signed. And by the time the final decree was signed, there were 7 different decrees that were signed by the judge. Each one was different. So, and to the day, we're trying to put it back together the way it was originally. And each time that a lawyer touches it, it gets more messed up.
Right.
And then when you try to correct it, they just say, no, that's what we went in there for. And it's kind of like, you know, we don't need them if it's what's going to be for. If we're going to if a father's going to go in there and just get treated this way, he doesn't need to go if he's going to be treated as a criminal. That's my objective. You don't need an attorney to go in there and be treated as a criminal, because a criminal, even you're treated as a criminal even when you have an attorney. You know, you understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's a money making game. It's a scheme. It's you know, and your child is for sale. And I hate to say it like that. Every attorney and every judge is going to go against me saying that. And there's good judges, there's bad judges, good attorneys, bad attorneys. There's good cops, bad cops. There's good firemen, there's bad firemen, right? Your house is on fire, you call for a fireman, and you don't want the lazy fireman, right? Because your house is on fire. You got a sibling or you got a parent that's in the fire, you want an aggressive fireman that knows the rules, that knows the, you know, what he has to do, his tactics. He wants to, you know, to get the person out to safety, right? And it should be the same thing with these judges. And these judges are just disregarding the law. They're allowing attorneys to run the courts. And I'm working on a story right now where a grandmother has full custody and nobody will help her. She went to the El Paso Sheriff's Department. They wouldn't honor her orders. She got a writ of attachment out of Bexar County signed by a judge. They wouldn't enforce it. They let a lawyer override it. They wouldn't let her file a missing child's report. So we did a public information request. We got their policy on it. Again, we were right because we've been doing this for so long, right? They wouldn't let her file interference with child custody. So that's 4 things. They wouldn't enforce her custody order. She's a sole managing conservator. Nobody else is supposed to have custody but her. The person that the child's with does not have any orders whatsoever. So she went over there to try to obtain the child with her custody order. Then she went with a writ of attachment. The lawyer interfered with the writ of attachment, told the sheriff not to proceed with the writ of attachment. The judge signed that writ of attachment. So now the lawyer has just interfered with that civil process of that deputy. The deputy listens, right? The grandmother didn't know where the child was. The law says in the Code of Criminal Procedure 63.001 what a missing child is. The unknown whereabouts. The whereabouts of the child are unknown to the legal custodian, which is grandma, the sole managing conservator. They didn't even do that. They wouldn't let her file a missing child report. And then they wouldn't take interference with child custody when they had it, when they had the little girl. And the little girl was in the sheriff's department in front of all of these law enforcement agencies, and they still wouldn't hand over the child to the grandmother who had sole managing conservatorship. And that's the story I'm working on. And if I can see it play as day here in Bexar County, it happens in Harris County, it happens in Tarrant County, and it's happening probably in Webb County. And it's tricks of the trade.
No, you know, the thing is, it's I read a plaque at this one attorney's office. It says, a good attorney knows the law, the best attorney knows the judge. And it's always stuck to me. And you see them with their campaign contribution. You see them paying the judges for that. And all of a sudden they're throwing the parties for the judge for re-election. And they're the ones that are getting all the cases thrown at them. There's so many things that go on in there. I think we need to revamp. We need term limits on judges. I think we need a term limit. You know, you're 4 years in the side. I'm sorry, but next term, you can't run again until another 4 years from now. But somebody has to come inside and take your place. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
But we need term limits, or else for you not to create these little dynasties. You can't have bailiffs run around threatening people, being enforcers. It happens in Webb County. It's happened in the past. You can't have that stuff that goes in there. It's not a mafia.
So
even though
it's funny you bring that up. It's funny you bring that up about bailiffs. Bailiffs are not employees of the judge, right? They're employees of the county. They work for the sheriff's department. The judge doesn't work for the sheriff's department. while she uses the bailiffs for security in her courtroom, I get it. But the law says, and I'm not going to tell you where because I'm not a lawyer and this isn't legal advice, but the law says that they must still uphold general law. So when these bailiffs are seeing lawyers do illegal stuff, they see their judges, of course, they have a duty to report that, because these illegal activities are happening. And nobody enforces perjury, right? And of course, we could get into the movements that have been going around, and I don't want to name political people because I don't want this to get booted off any social media platform. But you see these slogans like "Make America Great Again." Perjury is against the law. Aggravated perjury is a third-degree felony. And when these lawyers are lying in an official court proceeding, trying to muddy the waters or trying to poison the well to get the adversary or the advantageous result over their opposing party, that's not ethical.
No, it's
right?
not.
Right.
And
so they argue with these people when the policy of the state is to ensure that the children have access to the parents that are deemed appropriate. And while I understand they're trying to zealously fight for their clients' rights, when you use the child as a bargaining chip to go back and forth, you're not doing that, right? So lawyers honestly should be saying, hey, look, they have every right to ask for this. They have every right to ask for that. You have this right. You have that right. And we're going to play it like this. We're just going to be baseline like this. And y'all should just come up with a mutual agreement so that the child gets to see both of y'all. But instead, these lawyers like to pick and pull at each other to prolong litigation because it makes them money. And the judges allow it, right? And when the judges allow it, they allow those attorneys to play with that child's mental, emotional, and physical state, right? Not enforcing their orders. You have already ordered that parent possession time. You have already signed an order. Those are your orders. And now you don't want to enforce them. You want to send them back to mediation to go back and come up with another agreement. I think mediation is just a waste of time because most of the time people go to mediation because their orders aren't enforced. So now you're going to go sit and pay a whole bunch of other attorneys and a mediator to come up with another agreement that nobody's going to enforce. And it's a big, I don't want to say circle jerk, but it's a big circus. It prolongs litigation and it costs money.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct. And this happens all the time. They understand that it's there. They understand that their governing body, if their licensing board doesn't do anything about it, they understand that the judges won't do anything about it. They understand that they can play with the judges, and they understand that the judges are going to favorite certain people. And when that occurs, you all need to be very, very careful of when this happens to you in court, and you have to document it. I don't know if you can take another court reporter and say, you know what, I want my own court reporter because I do not trust your own court reporter. It's going to come down to that. In the Zoom, you have court watchers now that are watching this. They don't want people to go in there and watch anymore, but the court watchers are doing a better job than the bailiffs that were taught this and they understood what they were supposed to be doing, and they were not. So you need to protect yourself, people, in all different ways.
So can I tell you what we've been doing? What we advocate for it, and it's just not me. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people in the background. I'm just a fraction of those people, right? And so court watchers are important. If you're watching this, you need a court watcher. If you're in family court, you need court watchers. And let me tell you why. Whether it's on Zoom or in person, you need to take people with you. They're witnesses. It's just like a murder. The more witnesses, the better you're going to get a conviction, right? Because now you have multiple people from multiple angles saying, collaborating the story that you're reporting, your criminal report. And so it goes back to what I was telling you about nobody's above the law. In the disciplinary rules of professional conduct and the Texas Legal Ethics Commission, they both state that a lawyer can zealously fight for their client, but it must be within the bounds of the law. Well, you have the government code, you have the penal code, you have the education code, you have all these codes, which are all laws, civil rules of procedure. And when you're advocating for your client, you have to fight within those laws. So if you're making statements on a judicial record, in a judicial proceeding that you know are false, trying to gain the advantageous result in front of a judge, in front of a bailiff, that's perjury and aggravated perjury. When you're submitting pleadings that you know are false. And I think it needs to start with the TROs and the ex parte temporary restraining orders. When these people are reporting false claims to get a restraining order against dad or mom, and they're found to be false, there needs to be prosecution. But right now, we're on the big kick of domestic violence, which, depending on which statistic you hear or you watch or whatever, some people say women are more prone to domestic violence than men. And you see that a lot of men are more prone to domestic violence, but they don't report it. Well, whichever. You have to have checks and balances everywhere you go. So just like Texas says, we believe in equality, we believe in the LGBTQ community to have equality. There's no equality for men, right? Because we can show you the numbers where it says 91% of non-custodial parents are men in Texas. Texas Attorney General will uphold the rights, say the state of Texas believes in the laws and the Constitution. And this is why it's important to get into these elections and know who you're going to vote for. I don't vote blue. I don't vote red. I don't vote straight ticket, right? I go and try to meet the candidates that I have an interest in. The DA. I want to know if he's going to enforce this law. I want to know if he's going to enforce laws, period, right? I don't want to go out of my house, have a gun pointed at me. They take my wallet, me report it to the police, and the DA drop it because it's not a serious crime, or I don't have enough prosecutors. It's not my fault your staff isn't prepared or understaffed, right? I'm a citizen. You're supposed to protect me in your county. And if I report a crime because I allege that I've been assaulted or robbed or whatever, I still expect the DA to prosecute, right? Absolutely. But some of these DAs are coming across saying, well, we don't have the manpower to process that. Well, that's not my fault. That sounds like an issue with the state. If you need more funding, then maybe you should legislate for more funding, or get something. But right now with VAWA, right, Violence Against Women Act, they're throwing monies at this county for domestic violence. First of all, the name of it, Violence Against Women. Violence against women. Right now, we live in a world where everybody wants transparency and equality, and we're still submitting bills that say violence against women. Well, what about Violence Against Men Act? And again, I'm not trying to bring gender into this, but it seems like the federal government and the state wants to keep the feud between men and women to keep the money rolling. And it shouldn't be like that. If you're going to advocate for domestic violence, or advocate against domestic violence, it should be for men and women equally. And if a man makes a claim against a woman and it's not true, he should be prosecuted under the penalties of perjury, and the same thing for women.
Absolutely.
But they're not doing that.
And it has to happen, because it happens in both of them. Just look what happened with the actor Johnny Depp. Look what he started coming up with. Look the way he was treated. And it took a lot of courage for him to stand up, and he basically stood up. And unfortunately, it happens. It's like this, George. A lot of us understood what parental alienation is because we saw it growing up with a friend, with a cousin, that, they were split up. The parents were split up. One was not allowed to go to the other. The mom or the aunt would bash the kid's father in front of the kid. that stuff we saw. We all experienced something like that through our lives. As we grow up, it starts and the average of marriages splitting up is less and less every year. I don't know what the total is, but it's more marriages are going to end up in a divorce and continue through. And what happens is you're starting to see a lot more kids, more families broke in a divorce. Okay. You sometimes once you start going through it, then you start realizing what parental alienation was or is. Then you start realizing that there's interference with child custody. To me, and in my opinion, is the starting point or the feeding with water or watering of the plant of parental alienation.
Right. It's the foundation. That's where it starts.
The seed might have started before the marriage, or the seed might have started with the judge. Well, where's it being watered? Where's the fertilizer being added? Every time a father or a mother calls in that they can't see a child and wants to file up a report, the police are actually telling that other parent, you can do whatever you want because we're not going to do anything for it. And that basically teaches subliminally. There's somebody should do a study, but I bet you that's where it's going to come at. When kids start seeing that the police are not going to take away their mom or their dad for committing a crime, hey, I can do it too.
Yeah.
I can do this, I can do that, and it's going to lead to others. And unfortunately, look at what happened to Uvalde. You have kids that are pressed to a lot of mental issues at a very young age. They can't control it. They're going to snap some way or another. And
and you're right. The statistics, the state of Texas has already pulled this information. The state of Texas, the Texas Attorney General has already paid for this study. And I keep telling people that the the Child and Family Research Partnership out of UT Texas that did all the research for this, Dr. Diane Osborne has pulled all this. And she said 80% of children that come from fatherless homes go back right into the system. I don't want to get too much into my case, but my older son, we had problems seeing each other. I fought in court like hell, and he's got some issues going on right now. I didn't know about. They didn't want to tell me. Don't tell dad, whatever. And so I'm trying to grasp them now. But parents can't even discipline their child, right? The law says you have care, control, and protection with reasonable discipline. Right now, CPS is running rampant. If you just take your kid's cell phone away, CPS is called, and you have a restraining order, you have protective order, because as a parent, when you take some kid's cell phone these days, that's child abuse. And these judges are letting CPS do it. There's judges are letting temporary restraining orders for you trying to punish or discipline your child. And it's something so minute. So now these children are, that's why we live in a society today that everybody's feelings are hurt. It's okay. You can cry out, you can make these allegations, and parents can't parent their children anymore because parents are scared that they're going to catch a charge. And it's that bad that we live in a society these days, and it's all about money. And guess what? The parent that's pro se can't pay court fees. So guess who's paying for it? The taxpayers. They're going to get their money one way or another, right? So the CPS gets money, the attorneys get money, the ad litems get money, the guardian ad litems, the amicus, the judge, everybody gets money off of you and your child in court. And everybody knows it. And so that's one of my big issues now is I need parents to quit complaining about these courts are corrupt.
And start doing something about it.
Right.
And right now it's filing complaints, continue filing complaints, valid complaints, not just frivolous complaints,
right.
Valid complaints to the state bar and to the court, to the sheriff, everything that's going on there, because the issues that you talked about that the bailiff should be doing, we need the watchers to start looking into that, because you need yourself to be protected. And right now, with everything going on, it's through my experiences with the court system, I do not trust not one judge nor one court here in Webb County. And the way they are, I don't trust them one bit.
And it's total hypocrisy. I mean,
resonates across the state.
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's funny, right? And I was making fun of some things the other day. These judges, and I look at judges' Facebook pages and I see who they hang out with, and I try to connect the dots on which are lawyers and which are other judges and where they went to school. You know, you do your whole thing, right? So I do look at that, right? And so what I see is during election time, you see these politicians come out of the woodwork, and you see a judge with a shovel helping out a neighbor for community service. Then you see them saluting a United States service member, saying, "Thank you for your service." They're kissing babies and they're saying that they're here for the children, right? And then after they get elected, they're gone. Come election time again, they start working the streets, say, "I'm a champion, I'm here for children." But then all their family and their cousins and their friends, their church members, they all wear these shirts that says, "Vote George Saldana," right? But they never have gone in there and seen George Saldana at work. They just know, hey, he's a good guy at church. Oh, he loves, right? But they don't see him in action. And I want people to start seeing these politicians in action. There's some great Democrats here in San Antonio. Richard Raymond in Webb County, great, right? And then you have these slow politicians that don't reach out to you. My state rep doesn't reach out to me. I've reached out to him several times. My senator declined, doesn't speak to me anymore. I don't know why. I'm still a constituent. I still reach out. And then all of a sudden they just ghost you. But I believe that parents need to start looking at these judges, see who they're running against, and not just take their word for it. Oh, or Paul likes Judge Saldana, so I better like Judge Saldana, right? Actually do your research on these people. Actually ask questions. Go to these town hall meetings. Go to these debates. Start asking them the tough questions. Because you can sit here and all day long, and I could say George Saldana loves children and believes children should have fathers in their lives. And then guess what? In the background, what is George Saldana doing? He's keeping 91% of the fathers that come into his court as visitors. And I think we need to wake up and smell the coffee. We need to gather. We need to organize. And that's what I'm trying to do, is organize people to know that lawyers and judges are not above the law. We've seen judges go to jail. We've seen lawyers go to jail. We've seen cops go to jail. Nobody is above the law. So now that I know that judges go to jail, I know that lawyers go to jail, I know that cops go to jail, and I know that I have two pieces of documentation say you can zealously fight for your client's rights, but it must be within the bounds of the law. That tells me what? They can go to jail. So now what I'm going to do is, if the law enforcement's not going to allow me to make a criminal complaint, I'm going to make my own criminal complaint in form of affidavit. And it's getting so serious where I think we need to bring citizens arrest back, because they are law enforcement agencies that are refusing to uphold their oath of office, which is uphold the constitutions and the laws of the state. And now if we can't trust our law enforcement agency, we're going to have to take this into our own hands, because this is our children. And I'm not, and let me make this clear, I'm not promoting anarchy. I'm not trying to overthrow the government, right? But we're talking about our children here. And I'm going to do everything legally possible, touch that line, just get to that line to get to my child. And I think every parent should and should get involved and start looking at these processes, filing aggravated perjury on lawyers that are bad, start finding the connections between the lawyers. I've been able to record, well, I shouldn't say record, I should be able to document with video recording of forum shopping. And we talk about forum shopping, but I actually pretty much have it on video where I can almost prove it that there was forum shopping, where this attorney decided to go talk to a judge to get her in front of another judge to get the advantageous result. Where the filings, and it gets more complicated, but I'm going to get into my story later, through my group, that this lawyer is asking for her best friend, which is a judge, and they get a hearing with no notice, and then the filing was filed 1 minute after the court was already in session. So how do you get a court hearing? The motion's not even filed, and there was no notice to the other party, and she got 10 minutes notice. She got 10 minutes notice. Hey, be in that court at 1:30. We're in the court at 1:30, and then they're proceeding with this court hearing, and the motion hasn't even officially been accepted by the district clerk. Yes, I know that they can bring the motion before the judge, but that wasn't presented before the judge. If it was presented ex parte, right? She had no notice, and we have it all documented and recorded. And we know that she went to that judge's wedding in Mexico. We've seen them on the campaign trail, and she did it to interfere with another judge's ruling. Why didn't she go to the other judge that signed the sole custody paperwork, right? But she didn't. And so there's more to come. But
keep doing what you're doing, because you're shedding light to an issue that's there. It's a dark issue that exists. It's an issue that people look at judges. They look at magistrates as a person that's going to be neutral, that's going to be non-biased. And until you go in front of one and you actually pay attention to everything, not everybody pays attention. That's why they've been getting away with it. It's like the magician. But after COVID, I think the smoke and mirrors are already gone. People are paying attention a lot better. People are realizing what happened. New technologies emerge that we can see behind the scenes. Stuff like that. And it is something that it's sad, because one holds lawyers and judges to a high standard, and it's just another mafia to me. I bet you the mafia would do it a lot better than they would do it, and unfortunately it's just because they're actually a criminal organization, but they're doing exactly the same thing the way they're acting. It's incredible.
And you just said something like the mafia would do it better. And I'm going to have to disagree with you, because, the mafia is all about family, and the mafia doesn't play with children. People don't play with children in prisons, in jails, right? And these people are playing with the livelihoods of children, which makes it even worse.
That's what I'm saying, that the mafia wouldn't allow that. They'll say, okay, your weekend, this your weekend, you're this weekend. Quit messing around with that kid. Just take care. That's what would happen. Right. Because number one, these judges, they don't care. The lawyers don't care. The lawyers will do something, and then they come back and they'll tell you, well, that's what we did. What do you want me to do about it? And you're like, really? What do you want me to do about it? And folks, you have to be calm, because there's new laws, there's new things that are going out there that they'll label you a aggressive parent. They'll label you a parent that is not fit. They'll label you aggressive.
Mentally unstable,
because you're trying to enforce a decree that this magistrate signed. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And it happens, and it's sad, because it takes people. And there's a lot of emotions going on here, but folks, you guys have to be calm, collective. And if you go through this, be calm and collective, document everything. Make sure you have people that are witnesses. Document everything over and over, especially when you're dealing with what is going on with the family courts and courts in general.
Yeah, you're very much so. We're organizing. I'm just a piece of the puzzle. I'm not the whole picture. But anybody watching, you can find me on interference with child custody, Texas Penal Code 2503. We have a Instagram, we have a TikTok, we have 2 Facebook pages. We have a public and a private page. Of course, you can find me, George Saldana, on Facebook. I'm friends with Paul Buitrón here. And other than that, we're asking for every parent that has issues within the family court to come out and take a proactive approach to this. And if the parents that want to stay in the shadows, I get it, I understand it, but at the same time, the more parents we have exposing the problem, the better. And we're getting stronger. We're getting so much stronger that people are the movement's gaining momentum, and they're going to want to be on the right side of this when it all comes crashing down, because when it comes crashing down, everybody's going to be selling everybody out, and you're going to know exactly the lawyers and the judges who are playing games.
Absolutely. Well, number one, I want to thank you for keeping us abreast of what's going on and what you've been finding. It's interesting to see, and it's sad to see at the same time. But folks, when you guys go through a divorces are not easy. They're hard. Do everything correctly. Document everything that's going on. And good luck. But we're going to leave you with this. If you have a child, hug them. Tell them you love them. Be in their child's life. Get involved with them. And remember, not all judges are bad. Not all lawyers are bad. There's some good ones out there. Just keep the faith. Until next time, much peace.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.